They say a warrior is forged in battle, but that's not true. A warrior is forged in boredom, in the long stretches of silence between battles, in the mornings where nothing happens, but everything must still be done. The ones who only rise when the fire is lit are not warriors. They are moths, drawn to heat, not discipline. And when the fire burns out, they wander again, restless, craving stimulation. A warrior must be still enough to feel discomfort and not flinch, still enough to wait without reaching for a distraction, still enough to hear what others cannot. The subtle shift in the wind, the sound of a decision approaching, the signal that the world has moved by 1 inch. And now, it's your move. But we are not trained in stillness. We are trained in noise. We are trained to answer every itch, every craving, every mental twitch. We scroll, we click, we pace. We start things we never finish, and we call it ambition. But it's not. It's just fear in motion. It's just the inability to sit with oneself. So we move, we chase, we run, never asking, from what? The battlefield is not a place, it is a rhythm. And if you are out of sync with that rhythm, you will always arrive either too early or too late. You will miss the window that only opens once for those who waited without trembling. Stillness is not passivity. Stillness is power restrained. It's the bow pulled back but not released. It's the silence before thunder. I do not move until I must. I do not act to feel better. I act to win. Most men act to escape. Escape boredom. Escape silence. Escape themselves. They chase opportunity like it's prey, but they've never studied its patterns. They leap without observation. They swing without aim. And they fall again and again, blaming the world for being unpredictable. But the world is not unpredictable. It is simply uninterested in catering to the restless. If you can't sit still, you'll never learn the terrain. You'll never know the weather before it arrives. You'll never feel the weight of timing. Because wisdom lives in the quiet. Clarity lives in repetition. Power lives in restraint. I have won wars without drawing a blade, because I waited, and I watched, and when the moment came, I moved, not a second before. That is how the tall stand, not by being the loudest, but by being the most composed when everyone else trembles. So I ask you, can you sit still? Can you resist the impulse to chase every noise? Can you build without applause? Can you train in silence while others scream for recognition? If not, you will never stand tall. You may look busy, you may seem important, but your foundation is wind, and wind cannot carry a warrior. I sit still, not because I am weak, but because I am waiting for the exact moment where stillness becomes the sharpest strike. There is a noise in the mind that most mistake for thinking, but it is not thought. It is the rattle of fear disguised as strategy. It is motion for the sake of feeling alive. It is the child within, still screaming for something to happen. When a warrior cannot sit still, he listens to that child. He lets the noise dictate his next move. He sharpens his sword not because war is near, but because he is afraid of standing unarmed in peace. Stillness forces you to confront what moves you, and many are not moved by wisdom, but by the fear of being forgotten. They chase prestige, they run toward noise, they gather titles like armor, but beneath it, they are brittle. They've never stood long enough in silence to know their own shape. I have seen men with great strength collapse at the first sign of boredom. I have seen kings with armies lose to farmers, because the farmer knew patience, and the king only knew impulse. You must train yourself to wait like stone, to observe like a hawk above the valley, to hold your breath not in panic, but in mastery, Most mistakes are made not in chaos, but in the seconds before it, in the twitch, the assumption, the rush to solve what had not yet broken. You want to be great, but greatness cannot be summoned in motion alone. It is built in the quiet rehearsal of thoughts, in the still repetition of uncomfortable tasks, in the mastery of one's own reactions. Your enemy is not faster than you. He is simply quieter. He sees what you miss while you're busy proving you belong. A warrior who cannot be still will always be manipulated. He will chase decoys. He will fall for traps. He will mistake every loud thing for a threat and every quiet thing for safety. But the deadliest moves are made in silence, just as poison is quiet in the bloodstream. Stillness is the skill that precedes all others. You cannot read terrain if your mind is flinching. You cannot listen to allies if you are busy preparing your next sentence. You cannot lead if you are always reacting. You want to rise? Then stay seated until your breath aligns with the ground, until the dust settles around your ambition, until the reasons for moving are not loud, but precise. Every twitch weakens your posture. Every premature step invites collapse. Every loud declaration reveals your position to the enemy. But the man who waits without weakening, who sharpens in silence, who studies even when unseen, that man becomes the mountain others must climb to prove themselves. Do not mistake urgency for clarity. The loudest alarm does not always mean fire. The brightest light can still blind you. Train your nervous system to crave less, to see beauty in boredom, to find strength in simplicity, because one day the world will stop moving, and only those who've practiced stillness will know what to do next. I do not race. I do not react. I do not chase storms. I become the stillness that ends them. And I do not move unless the world begs me to rise. The one who waits does not wait idly. He trains in ways that cannot be seen. He rehearses responses before the question is asked. He fortifies the mind long before the battlefield arrives. Stillness is not laziness. It is preparation hidden beneath composure. It is listening when others speak only to be heard. It is refining 1,000 tiny disciplines while the impatient grow loud and brittle. I have seen restless warriors mistake speed for dominance. They charge into openings I created for them. They take bait, not because they are weak, but because they never learned how to pause. Your downfall begins not when you are overpowered, but when you are overstimulated, when you mistake momentum for mastery, when you act before you understand. A mind that cannot sit still is a mind that cannot see. It misses the shadow beneath the light. It hears words, but not intentions. It charges forward, never realizing it was led. If I know your rhythm, I own your outcome. If I see how quickly you react, I know exactly when to strike. And if you cannot hold your position mentally, emotionally, physically, then your fortress is made of fog. You wish to grow strong? Then embrace the art of no. No to the urge to reply. No to the temptation to explain yourself. No to the constant movement that disguises confusion as productivity. It is not the loud that win wars. It is the ones who made silence their ally. Think of a pond. When disturbed, it reflects nothing. But in stillness, it becomes a mirror, showing the full shape of the world. So it is with your mind. In motion, it distorts. In stillness, it understands. You were taught that action is everything, that those who wait are weak. But what if the one who can wait longer chooses the war itself? I do not sit still because I'm unsure. I sit still because I've already seen 5 moves ahead, and my next move needs no announcement. Noise is the weapon of the unprepared. Distraction is the ally of the undisciplined. And speed, without stillness, is just panic in disguise. A true warrior is not desperate for the next moment. He is anchored in this one. He knows the map not by glancing, but by feeling. He senses danger before it arrives because he trained his body not to flinch. You must sit with yourself long enough to hear what your fear says when there's no one else to blame. You must endure the quiet long enough to build a foundation deeper than applause. Only then can you stand tall, not swayed by winds, not shaken by silence, not moved by the movement of others, because standing tall is not a pose. It is the result of 10,000 unseen battles won within. Before I led armies, I mastered my own stillness. You will never know your strength until you stop proving it. You will never know your clarity until you stop explaining yourself. You will never know your path until you stop chasing the one lit for someone else. Stillness is the audit of truth. It reveals what remains when applause fades. It exposes what you carry when you're not performing. The warrior who can't sit still builds his identity on noise. He moves so others know he exists. He acts so he does not vanish. But existence built on attention is a mirage. It grows bright and burns out fast. What I build is slow, because I build it to last. You ask why you're tired, why every victory feels hollow, why progress feels like quicksand. It's because you never let the dust settle. You never sat long enough in one place to build weight. You confuse friction with forward. Do not mistake movement for growth. A leaf moves more than a mountain, but it is the mountain that endures. In stillness, you meet yourself, unmasked, unaccompanied, unapplauded. And that is where the real war begins, because most do not fear failure. They fear exposure. They fear sitting long enough to confront the truth they've buried under activity. But I sit, and I let the truth rise like smoke, because I would rather burn in honesty than survive in performance. I am not in a hurry, because I do not measure time like merchants. I do not sell moments for currency. I invest them in mastery. A rushed warrior sharpens his sword with shaky hands. A still warrior sharpens his senses. One prepares for war, the other prepares to be seen. And when the moment comes, and it always comes, only one will be ready to strike cleanly. You want to stand tall? Then stop leaping for every branch. Let your roots go deep. Let your discipline grow quiet and strong, because what you build in stillness will rise unshaken in storm. You will not need to shout. Your calm will speak. You will not need to chase. The world will shift around your gravity. This is not mysticism. This is physics of the human mind. A still body contains more potential than a frantic one. A calm mind sees more paths than a panicked one. Do not mistake calm for absence. It is the presence of power, unshaken. I have watched storms come and go. I have stood unmoved as empires collapsed, because I knew the only empire that matters is the one you build within. And that empire is only constructed when you stop running. I do not fear stillness. I trust it, because from it I rise, tall, grounded, and prepared for everything. You chase strategy. You chase motivation. You chase hacks and shortcuts. But you never chase stillness, because stillness is not sexy. It doesn't trend. It doesn't flash. It doesn't feed your need to feel like something is happening. But it is where everything actually happens. The warrior who cannot sit still is a servant to his own fear. He acts not to conquer, but to avoid. He collects tools he never masters. He builds plans he never finishes. He seeks battles that keep him distracted from the one war he must win, the war against reaction. I have no interest in appearing powerful. I am interested in being unshakable. And that cannot be trained in motion. It must be carved in silence. You think your next victory lies in more speed, more productivity, more doing. But sometimes the next victory lies in one simple act, refusing to flinch. Stillness is not idleness. It is observation without interruption. It is the patience to see what others miss. It is the courage to endure the silence without needing to fill it. You will not stand tall if you are always looking for the next step, because your eyes will be trained to search outward, not inward, and the world rewards those who move with inner rhythm, not outer frenzy. You think your presence is felt when you speak, when you act, when you post, when you go. But presence is not what you do, it's what you radiate. And nothing radiates stronger than a mind at peace, a presence that says, I do not need to chase, I know. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, stillness becomes volume. In a field where all soldiers rush to strike, the one who waits creates fear. You cannot fake that presence. You cannot mimic that patience. It is earned in the spaces where no one is watching. A warrior who cannot be still is a puppet on strings he doesn't see. He thinks he's choosing. He thinks he's free. But every move he makes is to escape the discipline he never built. And he will never stand tall, because tall is not just height. It is stability. It is alignment. It is the silent force of a life constructed, not scattered. When others wander, I remain. When others panic, I breathe. When others fall into movement for movement's sake, I tighten the grip on my stillness, like a blade not yet drawn. Because the blade that waits always strikes deeper. I am not afraid of waiting, because I know how much power lives in a warrior who sits, watches, listens, and then moves without doubt. The problem is not your ambition. It is your inability to hold it still, to let it breathe, to sharpen slowly instead of swinging wildly. Most people mistake tension for energy. They live in a constant state of tightening, muscles clenched, mind racing, jaw locked. But a drawn bow held too long breaks. A blade swung blindly dulls. You want to rise, but nothing that rises fast stays upright without deep roots. And roots grow in stillness, in repetition, in patience, not in hustle. You worship productivity. You devour noise, but you fear space. You fear the blank page. You fear the quiet room. Because there you are exposed. No titles, no followers, no metrics, just you, and the truth you keep outrunning. That is why you keep moving. Because standing still would mean looking in the mirror long enough to see the cracks. But warriors do not hide their cracks. They sit with them. They study them. They fill them not with illusion, but with structure. You think you'll find your next breakthrough in motion, but motion without mastery is drift. It creates momentum without destination, and then you wonder why you keep arriving nowhere. Sit, wait, breathe. This is not laziness. This is geometry of the soul. This is the precise calibration of self. The generals who lose are not always outnumbered. They are often just too loud in the wrong moment, too fast before the terrain is known, too eager to act without listening. Stillness lets you hear what noise covers. It lets you see what speed blurs. It teaches you to move not with excitement, but with clarity. Your opponent is not the man across the battlefield. Your opponent is the part of you that can't stop scrolling, checking, twitching, consuming. Your opponent is the part of you that equates stillness with insignificance, that believes if nothing is happening, you're falling behind. But behind what? The herd moves fast, but often it moves in circles, and those who break free are not always faster. They are simply still enough to realize the pattern. A warrior breaks the loop not by force, but by stopping when everyone else keeps running. You stand tall not because of how high you leap, but because of how deeply you anchor. Stillness is not weakness. It is control. It is choosing not to move until movement becomes destiny, not habit. If you cannot sit still, you will never hold the crown, because the weight of it is not in gold, it is in the silence it demands you master. The world rewards those who can hold a position without trembling, not those who sprint for every opportunity, but those who choose their moment like a blade chooses flesh, clean, precise, irreversible. When you train yourself to stay, to breathe, to endure the itch to act, you begin to see how many moves were traps, how many choices were reactions, how much of your life was noise in disguise. Stillness is not something you schedule. It is something you become. It is a posture, not a pause, a way of walking through the world without needing to prove you belong in it. The man who stands tall is not the one who stands out. It's the one who stands unshaken. Stillness is the forge. You enter soft. You exit steel, but only if you can stand the heat of silence, the silence where doubt whispers, where insecurity rattles, where your identity begs for distraction. This is the fire no one talks about, the inner war, the quiet battle between who you are and who you perform to be. When you stop moving, you'll feel it. The flood of thoughts, the ghosts of every unfinished intention, the echo of every time you ran when you should have stayed. And that's when the work begins. That's when the warrior is formed, not in the gym, not in the battle, but in the moment you decide to stay seated when every bone in your body says run. Do not fear boredom. Boredom is the testing ground of the mind. Those who can outlast it find ideas no one else could reach, discipline no one else could earn, strategy no one else could see. Stillness sharpens instinct. It tunes your senses. It slows time, not in the world, but in your awareness of it. Suddenly, every breath becomes a signal. Every gesture becomes a map. Every moment becomes a choice, not a compulsion. You want to lead? Then master stillness. Because leadership is not the loudest voice. It's the calmest presence in the middle of chaos. And that calm does not come from luck. It comes from 1,000 days of silence, from resisting the twitch, from breathing through the unknown until it becomes familiar. I do not trust the man who cannot be still, because he has not met himself. And if he has not met himself, he will betray himself, and you, the moment the winds change. I have built my mind like a fortress, not with walls, but with patience. You fear being left behind, but no one outruns their own chaos. The man who keeps moving without aim is not faster, he's just more lost. Stillness is not stagnation. It is the decision to stop letting the world pull you like a tide, to choose your direction, to own your pace, to build something that does not shatter under pressure. Do not confuse urgency with importance. The world will always scream for your attention, but urgency is not clarity. Noise is not necessity. Speed is not strength. Every empire that lasted was built slowly. Every blade that endured was sharpened slowly. Every warrior that stood tall did so because he first learned to kneel in silence, not to worship, but to observe, to humble his impatience, to discipline his desires, to train his eyes not to chase motion, but to see truth. Stillness is how you learn to stop defending yourself, because most defense is fear in armor. But when you know who you are, you do not need to prove it. You simply are. You walk slower, but you see more. You speak less, but your words strike deeper. You act rarely, but when you do, everything moves. This is not detachment. It is control. Control not over others, but over yourself. The first step to standing tall is sitting long enough to know what you truly believe, long enough to let your values settle like stone, long enough to realize how often you've been reacting, not responding. I have no fear of what moves fast. I fear what moves deliberately, what waits, what endures, what watches, because that is where real power lives. The restless are easy to read. Their eyes dart, their hands twitch, their plans change with the wind. But the still one, he watches with the same gaze in victory and in pressure. He does not flinch. He does not overreach. And when he moves, it is as if the world was waiting for it. That is what you must become, not the one who runs first, but the one who stands last. And I have never feared the noise, only the man quiet enough to hear what no one else does. The discipline to sit still is rarer than the strength to fight, because fighting is praised, it's visible, it feeds the ego. Because fighting is praised, it's visible, it feeds the ego, but stillness starves the ego, and that is why it's feared. It offers no applause, no reward, no validation, just you, and what you've been avoiding. Yet it is in that space, where nothing seems to be happening, that everything is being decided. While others reach for results, I reach for rhythm, because rhythm outlasts momentum. And when your rhythm is internal, not reactive, you become unstoppable. The warrior who moves only when he means to is more terrifying than an army of impulsive men. He wastes nothing, not energy, not breath, not movement. He builds a reputation not by boasting, but by showing up, prepared, again and again, in silence, in consistency, in invisible mastery. You want strength? Then learn how to be still when the world demands a reaction, when the market shifts, when emotions surge, when people expect you to perform. Pause, breathe, return to form, let the others flinch. The storm will pass, but only those who didn't move will still be standing to lead. Standing tall is not a pose. It is the shape of someone who refused to collapse every time the world tried to bend them. And that refusal comes not from pride, but from practice. Stillness practiced like a skill. Stillness that anchors you like roots in stone. You do not need more movement. You need more meaning. You need the silence that refines your yes and strengthens your no. Every twitch you suppress builds another brick in your foundation. Every moment you resist distraction sharpens your focus like a blade. You are not falling behind. You are falling apart if you keep mistaking chaos for creation. A house built on motion will sway, but a warrior built on stillness will not only stand tall, he will become the standard. I do not chase storms, I outlast them, because the warrior who can be still holds time in his hands and fate at his feet. The world belongs to the one who can wait without weakening, who can stay seated while others sprint toward ruin, who can hold his center while storms tear through the sky. Not because he is void of fear, but because he no longer lets fear choose for him. Every time you rush, you abandon your throne. Every time you chase without awareness, you forfeit your command. But the one who waits, with eyes open, breath deep, mind grounded, he does not chase. He draws the world toward him. Stillness is not absence. It is gravity. You feel scattered because you never stop scattering. Your attention is split into 1,000 fragile threads, each one tugged by urgency, by craving, by doubt. Pull them back, gather them, hold them steady. Let your mind become a blade so still that even chaos cuts itself trying to shake you. This is not poetry. It is war. And if you do not learn to be still, you will always be led by what moves first, not what moves wisely. True warriors do not flinch. They do not signal. They do not beg the world to notice them. They build, quietly, patiently, day after day. Until the world cannot help but see what does not bend. That is how you stand tall. Not by announcing your value, but by becoming so grounded, so rooted, that no storm can shake what you've built in silence. Stillness is not the end of action. It is the beginning of alignment. You act when it's time. You strike when it's right. And until then, you sit like a mountain, teaching the winds to respect your presence. Do not move until you mean it. Do not rise until your whole being moves as one. Do not speak until silence would be a betrayal. When you live like this, you no longer need to try to stand tall. You already are. I am Sun Tzu, and I built my name not in war, but in the stillness before it.